All right, it's time to break down the film one scene at a time. Act 1. Why don't we set some shit
Our
up?
film about a self-loathing screenwriter starts with the screenwriter loathing himself for a solid 2 minutes. Over a black screen, he says he doesn't have an original thought in his fat, bald head, and we follow a stream of consciousness where he laments that he's not happy because he keeps putting things off, is fat, needs to start jogging or rock climbing, needs to fall in love, needs to read more, learn Russian, learn Chinese, learn to play the oboe, be more confident that he needs to correct his brain chemistry, but he'll still be ugly since nothing he does will change that.
I'll be the screenwriter who knows Chinese. It's funny that he went to rock climbing. Maybe I'll start rock climbing.
Tartar sauce.
You just saw Mission Impossible 2.
I'd like to put my face right in that.
We cut to the set of Being John Malkovich, where we see my favorite actor in a dress telling everyone on set to shut up during a scene where everyone in a restaurant all has John Malkovich's head.
It's your worst nightmare, right?
Yeah, it really was creeping me out watching the behind. It's like some found footage horror film because it's that grainy VHS behind the scenes. Like, God, Malkovich everywhere, and then Malkovich is telling me to shut up.
Malkovich.
We see most of the crew for the film we're currently watching setting up a shot while screenwriter Charlie Kaufman watches on. In this reality, though, real Charlie Kaufman is instead played by Nicolas Cage, who of course also plays Charlie's twin brother Donald, who doesn't really exist. Everyone following so far?
It's funny, like you see the director of photography that we just talked about, who also shot this film. It's so like meta.
It made me wonder, like, did they shoot that film for that scene for this film, or was that actual behind the scenes footage from Being John Malkovich, and then they just added the shot of Kaufman kind of slinking off in the background?
I think they just added. I don't think that I don't know. He did tell Spike Jonze about the idea while they were doing Being John Malkovich, so maybe. But I know that the Nick Cage stuff was not.
Yeah, right.
Maybe they filmed these other parts for.
I just wonder if that other part was legit behind the scenes footage that they filmed.
It might have been. I don't know. No, they have PAs just kind of wandering around filming a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's what. Just don't do it in front of Christian Bale.
Fucking unprofessional, mate.
La-di-da-di-da.
No.
Charlie nervously makes his way outside, where he narrates to himself that no one even knows who he is, despite being the guy who wrote the movie they're all working on, and he wonders how the hell he got there. Boy, he could really use a writer's strike or something to take a break.
He'd just torture himself the whole fucking time and try to figure out where he's going with the script anyway.
Yeah. Well, we cut to the entire history of evolution, from a molten ball of rock orbiting the sun to single-celled organisms to dinosaurs to a fox decaying to an ape standing upright and finally to a baby, presumably Charlie, being pulled out of a vagina. So we do see a real baby being born, but thankfully no one tried to crush it this time.
God damn it. That's mom and dad for all you that did it.
I hope you got to add that breast in the little counter there.
I did. There's only one. Just a touch of a nipple.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a lot in this movie, and it's mostly because of LaRoche's porn site later on.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to count these, but it's like we set the precedent on Dog Eat Dog. He shows like a porn page, and there's just tons of nudity on that, so have to.
Mm-hmm. We cut to Charlie sweating his ass off in a restaurant across from Tilda Swinton, a.k.a. Valerie. He narrates to himself about thinking he has cancer, that he's sweating way too much, and that she thinks he's bald. But she cuts off his stream of consciousness by saying, "I think you're great." I love this. Quick fact. The belly in Nicolas Cage's fat suit in this movie was stuffed with lentils and beads to simulate body fat jiggling. Cage sweated so much in the suit that the lentils sprouted.
Yeah.
Sure, you could eat them. I'm sure that adds to the nutrition somehow. Like, sprouted seeds or whatever.
Same as like putting them on a damp rag, you know?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
She says her agency loved the Malkovich script and says that she'd love to be inside his brain, to which he says, trust me, it's not fun, which based on his constant nonstop neurotic stream of consciousness, I'd say is absolutely true. We find out Charlie has been hired to write a film adaptation of a book called The Orchid Thief by an author named Susan Orlean, which is all true. What we're watching is the adaptation he came up with. Charlie nervously fidgets as he explains that he wants to remain true to the narrative of the book rather than to be artificially plot-driven. He says he doesn't want to ruin the book by making it a Hollywood thing like an orchid heist movie or changing the orchids into poppies to make it a movie about drug running. Valerie says her team thought maybe Susan and a character named John LaRoche could fall in love, but Charlie vehemently argues that he doesn't want to cram in sex or guns or car chases or characters learning profound lessons. Every single thing he says he doesn't want the movie adaptation to become ends up happening, by the way. We're not even 10 minutes in, and the groundwork has already been laid for the brilliance of this film. We cut to the New Yorker building in Manhattan, where we see the author of Orchid Thief, Susan Orlean, busy writing 3 years earlier about John LaRoche, and we listen to her narrate part of the book. She describes LaRoche as a deeply handsome man despite missing all his front teeth, and that she was introduced to him because of a story she wrote for the New Yorker about a white man who was caught stealing orchids with 3 Seminole Indians. We cut to a flashback within that flashback of the crime in question from 2 years earlier, where we see John LaRoche enlist the Native Americans to dig or cut up rare plants, since if he did it, it would be a crime, but having Native Americans do it is fine, since it's technically their right, even though the plants are endangered.
Which I don't think is 100% true, but as he argues in the movie, it's like there's a gray area, and like they've argued it in court
to figure out.
And,
Yeah.
And they've never won. They've never won against the tribes. So
yeah. I know my uncle used to go fishing with natives in Alaska because he knew a lot of them from working up there, and they would hunt off of the boats, and because they're the only people allowed to shoot off of the boats. So he shot a moose off the boat, but his friend is the one who actually shot it. Because he was. Yeah.
Well, you just outed him publicly, so.
Oh.
Redacted.
Statute of limitations. This was like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Charles arrives at home to find his down-on-his-luck twin brother lying on the ground, stretching his back, where Donald says he has a plan to move out of Charles' house by becoming a screenwriter himself. That'll work super quick. Just hit up Starbucks, write a screenplay, boom, you're a millionaire. That'll make tons of money, right? That's why all screenwriters are happy right now in Hollywood, and they got nothing to complain about.
Nothing to complain about.
I did like that, where he's like, I got an idea. What does he say? I got an idea to move out. He's like, is that getting a job? Is that going to help you move out?
No, I'm going to be a screenwriter. It's like the last thing you would want your loser brother to say to you. Oh, okay, cool. You going to sell for fucking Avon after that? Or?
I do like in this movie that they're both sort of like, I guess, supportive of each other. They're not like negative on each other. Like it would be really easy for Charlie to be really bitter of Donald's success, but I mean, he kind of is, but he's not like taking it out on him or anything. It's basically like, all right, well, despite everything I thought, Donald's just way better at me, which makes sense because I'm a loser. So
I feel like really that changes. He's like, I can't fucking figure this out, and everybody seems to love everything Donald does, so I'm just gonna embrace it and just go with it. And even though it's like he obviously is a terrible writer, but you know,
but I also took it as like that's what screenplays are, and he knows that. And he's just trying not to do that because he wants to be better. He wants to be more artistic.
Yeah,
but it's like he knows that shit is what'll sell scripts. He's just trying not to do it.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Can you imagine Charlie Kaufman writing like some fucking action thriller? I just can't even imagine. It'd be Christopher Nolan-esque.
Oh God.
Yeah. Oh, what? Way overblown and overrated.
Just so like complicated that you're like, what the fuck is happening now?
Yeah. I'm not a big Nolan fan.
Yeah. I've slipped. It used to be like back in the day, like Memento and what was the Magician movie that he did?
Prestige.
Prestige. Like, I thought he was fucking a genius, but now I'm just realizing he's really just up his own ass all the time.
Yeah. And he makes movies that look good and have action in it. So
that are
think they're
overly
smarter than they are.
complicated and everybody thinks they're like brilliant, but sometimes they're just kind of like, okay, we get it. Dream within a dream. All right. Gotcha.
Those people will then give a C to Adaptation for being too confusing.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
I feel like with Nolan, people are like, I don't get it, but everybody told me it's brilliant. So
and they have British accents, so it's got to be sophisticated. I mean, I think they did. I couldn't hear half the dialogue, so I don't know what the fuck they're saying.
It's true.
Dunkirk was so disappointing. I know that's internet heresy to say that Dunkirk is not that good, but yeah.
Well, there's Full Frontal in Oppenheimer, so
Ooh,
yeah,
so
you know,
we get to see what's
that
his
makes up
face.
for it.
We get to see what's his face.
Cillian Murphy
Murphy's-
and Florence Pugh, which is what I'm in for.
She's old news.
Yeah, I just want men, naked men.
Yeah.
I rewatched 28 Days Later.
I want
just that opening scene.
Scarily gaunt Irishman dong.
I want to put that. I just want to see naked men on a loop.
This is
That's
the
the
next
preview for
short
this
for
episode.
YouTube. Charles is disgusted at the thought of his jobless loser brother assuming he can do what Charles does for a living, especially when you realize Charles was nominated for an Oscar for his Being John Malkovich screenplay, presumably long after the events of this film, but still. Donald says he's taking a screenwriting seminar, and Charles says screenwriting seminars are bullshit, while looking at a news clipping of a violinist named Amelia, who is Charles' somewhat girlfriend or something.
I was confused about that. Like, like, why is he looking at a news clipping of her and not?
I think she's his friend, and he wants it to be more, and I don't know.
Yeah. Like, he just saved the clipping. I don't know. It's like right under his pillow.
That's something he
probably
would do.
jerking off to.
Yeah,
He
jerked off to a dust jacket on a book.
That is true.
Donald says he'll pay back Charles for the seminar, and Charles rants that anyone who says that they have the answer to anything attracts only desperate losers, like, well, Donald. Meanwhile, Donald gets comfy stretching his back again while cutting off his brother over and over.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm listening. All right. I love that he's like making Charlie pay for it too.
Yeah, well, it's only $500.
I don't even have $500 for this.
He sleeps on like a folded cushion downstairs.
Yeah, I like that Charlie's house is like big and nice, but like his bedroom is just a mattress on the ground or whatever. And there's nothing. The house is like bare. There's like nothing in it.
I assume it's supposed to be temporary, but it's probably been very long. He's just trying to like make it seem like it's still temporary, even though he's like obviously there for the long haul.
Yeah. Donald says Robert McKee's principles will guide him to being a great writer after Charles says there are no rules when it comes to writing. Charles says he's writing a script about flowers, which has never been done. And Donald says, what about Flowers for Algernon? And Charles says, that's not a story about flowers. And then Donald's like, oh, I wouldn't know. I didn't watch it.
I don't know.
I didn't see it. Charles says those seminars are dangerous for writers since writing should be a journey into the unknown rather than just following a blueprint. Which, yes, is true, but also it's script writing. There are blueprints you should follow.
Yes.
I mean,
and honestly,
otherwise you end up with a C cinema score for your movie.
Sometimes when you don't follow the blueprint, it can be very dangerous, or can take a movie that has promise and just makes it shit. Like, see every Adam Sandler movie since like Happy Gilmore.
Hey, come on.
They don't follow the hero's journey, whereas those first two movies did and were watchable.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones.
Yeah. That's what I also like this. The movie's not overly cynical about that. It's basically like, if anything, Charlie is wrong by assuming you shouldn't follow those conventions. Like, do your own thing, be autistic. I want to make a movie where nothing happens because that's what life is like. Like, no, that's not what people were going to want to see. And even if it's realistic, like, why do it just for the sake of realism? Like,
who wants to watch that? Really, The Orchid Thief on paper is not worth a movie. Like, I don't even know why they pitched it as a movie. Like, somebody was like, turn this into a movie.
That's just Hollywood. I think they'll just buy
what was
any
coming
book
out
that's
around
a
that time,
bestseller.
because there were some movies like that where they were following just like a person, like a real person's journey that didn't really have any real excitement. I'm trying to remember, because it is reminiscent of a couple movies of that era that Hollywood loved, because it's like, these are real people and real drama. So I can see Hollywood.
It's based on a true story,
on
so obviously that was happening at that time.
Yeah,
and I think it's just Hollywood to just buy an option for any type of bestseller, just in case you can turn it into a movie. You can buy them for pennies, relatively speaking.
That one in
pay a
particular,
pittance to a writer to make a screenplay out of it, and then most of them don't even ever get made. Even if they get a completed screenplay, it just sits somewhere.
They just sit,
just have the option.
Yeah, I think also it's because in case a trend develops where they start showing certain movies like you're talking about, where it's following a real person's life or whatever. Well, if other studios are doing it, then we need to jump on and do it. So we need to have like a collection of options available to do that.
We've had this one sitting in the library for 10 years, and now feels like the time for it to come out.
Yeah. We cut to Charles awkwardly hanging out with Amelia, where Amelia says she's going to fix him as he smiles dotingly at her. She thinks doing the Orchid Thief will help him get out of his own head, which couldn't be farther from the truth. He drags everybody into his head. And that's where we are. She says he needs new clothes since he dresses worse than his unemployed brother, and he hesitates to make a move on her. We then cut to Charles desperately trying to start writing, but he quickly starts monologuing about everything else he should be doing besides writing. And again, we hear a stream of consciousness where he says, to begin, how to start. I'm hungry. I should get coffee. Coffee would help me think. Maybe I should write something first, then reward myself with coffee. Coffee and a muffin. Okay, so I need to establish the themes. Maybe a banana nut. That's a good muffin. I like eating pussy. I don't know why more guys don't like eating pussy. Maybe that's just black guys.
Whatever happened to the guy who tried to fly across the world?
Tartar sauce.
I love Cage's stream of consciousness moments in these movies that we watched. I wish it happened in every movie. I want to hear Eddie King's stream of consciousness.
I want to hear
God.
I want to hear Benjamin Franklin Gates' stream of consciousness when he's. I guess we do actually when
we
do
together. Pretty much
says it out loud.
Non-related things.
Desk, wooden date, olden wooden Gates. Bill Gates. Bill Gates Foundation.
I know where
Coronavirus.
It is. Seattle.
Conspiracy.
Seattle. We gotta go to Seattle. The Emerald City.
Wizard of Oz.
We'll ride the ducks.
Flying monkeys.
We'll get in the duck boat. They hit it on the duck boat.
So just laughing like it's on the duck boat that crashed on the Aurora Bridge. And then the wreckage of it's in a junkyard and he has to break into a junkyard.
He has to scuba dive down to get it.
Oh, fuck.
You gotta put that scuba in everything.
Yeah, that's true. He's got a scuba.
I think we've written National Treasure 3.
We're waiting for our money, Brockheimer.
We have to stop by the Sleepless in Seattle house.
Oh, it's actual real boat, houseboat. They filmed on the water.
Beautiful view.
It's a beautiful view.
All right, move on. We cut to Susan Orlean writing The Orchid Thief, and she describes the dangerous history of orchid hunting and many crazy characters throughout history that preceded John LaRoche, including guys getting their heads bashed in, drowning, getting dysentery, etc. We see LaRoche in court after the whole stealing orchids for the help of Seminole Indians incident, and we see Susan arrive in the courtroom where she listens as John describes his history with horticulture and describes himself as probably the smartest person I know. Outside by his rape van, Susan stops LaRoche, and she asks if she can do an interview with him, and he is shocked and excited when she writes down that him saying the judge can go screw herself.
I love the way you say rape van.
We cut back to Charles writing, and he describes the scene we saw earlier of LaRoche stealing the orchids with the Seminoles, but he quickly decides to take a break, and we see him on another date with Amelia driving home after watching a performance. He drops her off, and she invites him in, but he George Costanzas the situation by saying he needs to get to bed since he has a lot of work to do the next day. We watch her expression change from flirty to disappointment as she realizes he's serious. He asks if she wants to go to an orchid show in Santa Barbara, and she decides not to since this doofus is never going to make a move on her.
Coffee isn't coffee. Coffee is sex.
She quickly excuses herself, and he self-loathes some more about what an idiot he is for not going inside. He says he should just go knock on her door and kiss her, but of course, he just drives off.
I'm going to do that right now.
We cut back to LaRoche and Susan 3 years earlier, where John tells her his van is a piece of shit, but when he hits the jackpot, he'll be able to buy himself an awesome car. We see that she's a bit conflicted.
Really starts out as just painted as an idiot.
Yeah.
This van's a piece of shit, but when I hit the jackpot, I'll buy myself an awesome car.
We see that she's a bit conflicted at getting into this toothless weirdo criminal's Florida man's rape van, but she decides anyway, and they find her later in a shallow grave near the Fakahatchee Strand.
Foreshadowing.
He says his whole life now is about finding a ghost orchid after pulling out into oncoming traffic, and she writes down that his van smells funny. He explains that he researched that as long as the Indians are the only ones touching the plants, no one can touch him, and he's the only one in the world who knows how to cultivate the ghost orchid. So she writes down that he has delusions of grandeur. We cut to Charlie reading Susan's book and hear Susan's voice saying orchids are the sexiest plants on earth, but he's interrupted by Donald laying on the floor saying he's pitching his screenplay in Robert McKee's seminar the next day, and Charlie makes fun of him since their mom thinks his idea is a combination of Silence of the Lambs and Psycho. Donald asks why Amelia doesn't come around anymore and eats a sandwich on the floor while smirking. It really feels like at this point that Donald doesn't exist. It's just a caricature of inside David's mind, but eventually we see him interacting with people, so we know he's a real, a real figurative person.
You mean Charlie's mind? You said David.
Yeah. Oh, Charlie. Yeah.
Back to the weatherman.
David all these characters. Yeah.
It's funny. It's a stream of consciousness, probably like linked to weatherman back.
Yeah.
Those synapses connected again.
We cut back to Susan at LaRoche's nursery, where some Seminole guy gropes her hair and makes her very uncomfortable as he stares at her sexily. The guy almost starts crying and says, "I can see your sadness. It's lovely." And she says she's just tired.
I love that scene so much. It's so well done. And like Meryl Streep is so good. Like she's flattered but uncomfortable and and just weirded out by this guy.
Mm-hmm. He says he doesn't like to talk much since that's the Indian way when she asks to interview him. And then we cut to she and LaRoche at a flower show. LaRoche finds a ghost orchid and he's condescending to her as he describes a moth that pollinates the orchid by basically making love to it. Then the tone changes as he passionately says the flowers and insects show us how to live because they follow their hearts, and when they spot their soulmate flower, they don't let anything get in their way. You can tell Susan's suddenly a little smitten for this psycho because of how passionate he is, which is something she's missing from her life.
Yep.
We cut to Susan at a dinner party where all the guests make fun of LaRoche and his missing teeth, but she excuses herself to the bathroom where we can tell that she feels bad for making fun of him. We also see her conflicted at dinner where in narration she says that she wants to know what it feels like to care about something passionately, the allure of the ghost orchid as well as her desire to see one in person in the wild. We see her riding in LaRoche's van again, and we find out John is basically a collector of things he becomes incredibly passionate about before abandoning them completely, including turtles, fossils, 19th century mirrors, and tropical fish. He tells a story about being obsessed with fish and then deciding one day, fuck fish, and that he'll never set foot in the ocean again. She can't understand why, since some part of that love must linger, and she says that she wishes she could move on from things the way John did. We see Charlie at a coffee shop reading Susan's book, and he has a playful exchange with a waitress who sees the book and says she loves orchids. He again fumbles for something clever to say to a cute girl, and we see a fantasy sequence of him at the flower show in Santa Barbara where he is with the waitress. She says flowers are so sexy, and they goofily kiss in the woods before she takes off her shirt, exposing her breasts, and we suddenly cut to Donald knocking on Charlie's door while he's masturbating.
I love that kiss. He's like so like childlike.
Yeah.
when she kisses him.
Yeah.
So good.
Donald just lets himself in and asks if Charlie wants to hear his screenplay pitch, and Charlie says,
What? You want to hear my pitch? Go away, goddammit.
Donald says he's just trying to do something with his life, and Charlie rolls over, which I guess is enough of an invitation for Donald to give him his pitch. Donald tells his
smells
brother,
like masturbation in here. Can I come in?
Go away, naked brother laying in bed, trying to sleep. Just spill some.
You want me to bring some Febreze in?
Donald tells his brother that in his movie there's a serial killer being hunted by a cop, and the killer is keeping a victim in his basement. But the twist is, all three of them are the same person.
Oh, man.
Charlie says the idea is cliche, and there's no way to actually write that story, since you can't have three versions of the same person in different places at the same time. And when he asks Donald how he plans on writing it, Donald says they can just use trick photography. Charles tries to explain his point, but gives up halfway through and says the idea is great, and it reminds him of the movie Dress to Kill. Donald says, cool, I really like Dress to Kill until the third act, denouement. And Charlie says that's not how it's pronounced.
Especially the Ouroboros thing. I don't know what that word means.
we see Charlie in the... I love that again, too. It's just like, Charlie knows all these technical things about writing and stuff, but it's like, it's practically useless. Like, Donald's the one who's actually being a success because he's just doing... He's passionate about it, and he's doing, he's writing a script that it's stupid, but it's what people want. And Charlie's
I feel like
the
that's
one
how the world is in general. Is like the people, a lot of times the people who do things big are not the most qualified, and they're not the best. They're just the ones who are confident enough to try. And I feel like that's kind of the lesson in this movie. It's like, just fucking try it, dude.
But I also like that it's not overly negative about it. Like, if anything, Charlie's the one who's wrong for not doing that. It's just being kind of a pathetic, self-indulgent wiener, as another Nick Cage character would say.
It's funny how they all are just like all coming together. What it'll be like after 100 of these goddamn things.
It'll be insane. We'll just have all these Nick character Cages living in our head. We see Charlie in the coffee shop again as he very awkwardly tries to ask the waitress he attempted to jack off to before he was rudely interrupted if she'd like to go with him to the flower show. She quickly shoots him down and seems disgusted that she gave him the impression that she was interested in him, and he apologizes after seeing the look on her face. And she says, "Say goodbye to these, Michael." Arrested Development. Oh, I guess you can't ever go back to that coffee shop.
Yeah. I would never set foot in there again.
Yeah.
Damn it, I liked that key lime pie.
We cut to Charlie at the orchid show alone, where he compares orchids to women and how unique and beautiful they all are. And we see Susan watching her husband from another room with sadness in her eyes. We cut to her and LaRoche in his van again, where LaRoche calls his ex-wife a bitch and says he opened a nursery with her that took off, but when it became wildly popular, people came out of the woodwork to spend time with him, and he theorizes that they were lonely. Susan realizes that she's doing exactly that and sadly looks out the window. LaRoche explains that he loves plants because they're so mutable and that adaptation is a profound process. And that means you figured out how to thrive in the world.
Multiple meanings, you see.
Susan says it's easier for plants to adapt since they have no memory, but for a person, adapting is almost shameful since it's like running away.
Act 2. It's about time we had some conflict, wouldn't you say?
We see Charlie on the set of Being John Malkovich again, where he watches all of the principal stars of that movie, including Sal from Arsenal himself, John Cusack, which I didn't even recognize him because he wasn't wearing a do-rag. Cusack completely ignores Charlie when he waves at him. We see Donald.
This is definitely the way that Charlie sees himself.
Yeah, invisible.
Like, nobody even knows who the fuck I am. Why am I even here?
Yeah.
You must feel like that with a lot of script writers that are hanging out on set, you know, because it's like, people will just think you're another PA or something.
Mm-hmm. I think at this point, though, I mean, if you saw Charlie Kaufman on set, you'd be like, holy shit, that's Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. We see Donald chatting it up with Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, Caroline, which pisses Charlie off since he's the writer of the film, but no one seems to like him since he has the people skills of a slug. we see Catherine Keener also completely ignore away from Charlie, and he scolds his brother for hitting on the makeup girl.
Like, why is Donald allowed to be there?
Because he's his guest, I guess.
Maybe people thought he was Charlie, and
he just wanders in.
I also love that scene too. He's like holding a coffee and like a biscuit or something in his hand the entire time, and it just looks. I don't know, the way that Nick holds it and with his posture and everything, it just looks so fucking goofy and pathetic. Like, this guy is just here for the free snacks.
Yeah.
Check out craft services, man.
You guys ever watch my movie? Ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah.
There's like that scene when Funkhauser comes and visits the Seinfeld set, and he's just there for the fucking food.
He's just there for the craft services. Doesn't he like load his pockets with M&Ms or some shit and pisses Larry off? Oh, fuck. Charlie tells Donald not to embarrass him since he has to work with these people who don't seem to know he exists. Donald asks Charlie to give him a cool way to kill people for his script, of course, not in like real life. And Charlie tells him to make the killer a literary professor who cuts off little chunks of his victims until they die and calls himself the deconstructionist. Donald says he likes the idea, and Charlie again shits on him by saying, "I was kidding." Donald says, "Oh, sorry, you got me," with a big grin on his face, but eventually asks if it's cool if he uses it anyways.
I love that he's just like, you can't even tell that Charlie's trying to insult him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that exchange so much. That might be my favorite brothers exchange in this. Sorry, you got me. But do you mind if I use it anyway?
It's so great because it's like, it's still, even that is just meta wrapped within itself, with meta commentary. Like, he just comes up with this idea off the top of his head and then admits it's stupid, but then it's like, no, it's actually would work. It would work in a, you'd see it in a Hollywood script.
Oh, yeah.
So the part of his brain that thinks it's cool is also is different from the part of his brain that's like, it's stupid, don't use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's probably a constant like conversation in his own head.
Yeah.
Like, I came up with a great idea. No, that's stupid. Fuck, nobody will ever like that. All right, I'm taking it out. But see, think about like a writer like that who probably has come up with a million great ideas, but is just like fuck, so self-loathing and hating himself. He's just like, no, that won't ever work.
Yeah. I think it's clear to say these two are polar opposites. Totally different. Charlie's the ever negative, self-loathing asshole who thinks every bit of writing needs to be deeply profound and original, while Donald is always positive, loves everyone, and would be stoked to be the guy who wrote Con Air. God damn it. We see Donald and the makeup girl hanging out in Charlie's house while she reads his script and says it's really good. Meanwhile, Charlie stares at his typewriter in the other room, listening to his loser brother be better at everything than him, including picking up chicks and screenwriting at this point.
Then he throws Dave Chappelle out the airplane, lands on a car.
And lands on the car. This is hot. This is hot. And then, even though he's cuffed to the fire truck, he flies off the fire truck through a walkway into
His
a
arm
gravel
doesn't
pit.
rip off or anything.
His arm is totally attached.
There's lots of sparks. Sparks everywhere.
Lots of sparks. I like sparks. Based off my favorite movie.
Could eat a peach for hours.
We cut to Charlie walking around lonely with a beer in his hand at a party where Donald is telling Caroline, "You look really hot tonight, baby." And they start making out while Charlie tells him he's heading home. Donald tries to talk him into staying, then spots Amelia with another guy since she gave up on ever even getting to first base with the wet blanket, Charlie. She introduces Charlie to her boyfriend, Peter Griffin. No, I think his name was David. Then to the group, and Charlie is gutted. That dude did that when that guy walked in behind her. I did start laughing because I thought the same thing. I was like, this dude looks like Peter Griffin. She's got a very unique taste in men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think they put, I don't know, they didn't put like the most beautiful actress they could possibly find in that role, like most movies do.
Yeah. Makes it more believable.
She's
make it more
she's like a girl
believable,
next door. She's like an average woman.
She's very cute, but she's like, not Maggie Gyllenhaal or
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep.
Amelia asks how Charlie is, and he says, "You know me, a mess." She asks how the script is coming, and he says it's a disaster, and he doesn't know what he's doing. He quickly makes it awkward, saying she has her own stuff, and he doesn't want to bore her. Then he asks Donald if he's coming with him. Donald says he's staying at Caroline's tonight for a little push in the bush. That was so great. This little dance too.
Yeah.
A little push in the bush.
You'd see him doing the helicopter at home.
You spin me right round, baby. Right? Oh, fuck. Charlie walks away, and Amelia seems sad to see him go, but can't wait for Peter Griffin to give her some push in her bush as well. We see Charlie in his room. We see Charlie in his room desperately trying to figure out how in the hell to write a movie about flowers, and he suddenly gets some inspiration that he should start at the beginning of life and follow a journey of evolution and adaptation that unites every living creature. Get it? Adaptation.
I love it. It's just like, how much could you possibly overthink this?
Yeah.
Like, start at the creation of a universe and move forward.
He pulls out a tape recorder and basically describes the scene at the beginning of the film showing the origins of life on Earth. He gets really excited and seems to have finally broken through his writer's block. But of course, we follow that up by him sitting in the dark, looking miserable, listening to himself, obviously hating what he thought was a breakthrough. Donald walks in praising Robert McKee's screenwriting seminar and says he's a genius, just like Charlie. He says you must find originality within predetermined genres because no one has ever come up with a new genre since Fellini invented the mockumentary, and he asked Charlie what genre his Orchid book will be.
Mine's a thriller. What's yours going to be?
Charlie solemnly says,
You and I share the same DNA. Is there anything more lovely than that? What'd you say, bro?
God, such a fucking brilliant line.
That is, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
He doesn't even hear him. What?
Yeah, you're like, huh?
Probably best to not hear that.
Yeah, because I think that one would have broken Donald a little bit, as positive as he is.
Yeah.
We cut to LaRoche watching TV with his dad or something. I don't know. Where he gets a call from Susan Orlean. She says she thinks he's smarter than people think, and she asks what happened to his nursery. She's about to get real sad, folks. He says things were going pretty well until one day he was pulling out of a driveway with his mom, uncle, and wife without paying attention, and the car was hit by a truck. He says he killed his mom, uncle, lost his front teeth, and his wife ended up in a coma for 3 weeks.
It's so sad because it's like they're like congratulating him on his success as he's pulling out, and that's why he's not paying attention.
Yeah.
And then ends up killing them all. Well, aside from his wife.
Yeah. He says that when she regained consciousness, she divorced him, and we see Susan crying on the other end of the phone. She says she might have left her marriage too had she almost died, since it would have been a get out of jail free pass, I guess, to leave. And no one would judge you for it. Kind of sounds like she's incredibly happy in her own marriage here, right? Like, so stoked.
Good. I wish I could almost die so I could get out.
Like, it's like they live in this world of like so much judgment and like worried about what everybody will think. And it's like, if you're really that unhappy in your marriage, just get out of it.
That's one thing.
At the same time, I feel like it might ruin her life because it would send everything into upheaval.
That's why she envies LaRoche, because he can just drop things and move on. She couldn't. So she needs reasons to move on to stuff. And so she fantasizes about having a near-death experience to give her a get-out-of marriage-free pass.
Yeah.
Whereas LaRoche can just be like, fuck fish, and then have to go back one day.
Fuck hangers. That's actually one thing I really do like about this movie is them talking about that, like how people are so hesitant to make changes in their lives because of the judgment they feel they'll get based off of it. Because we're so deeply rooted into what people think about us and their opinions that sometimes it paralyzes people to make decisions that will better them or make them happier. And I like that theme running throughout, and LaRoche kind of being like that clicking, like that moment where it clicks, like, oh, okay. She like, he's when he's unhappy with something or he doesn't like something, he just says, fuck it. And she wants that.
It's the characters having profound experiences.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great irony of it, is that it shows like there was a story in The Orchid Thief that could have been adapted.
Yes,
into
that's
a film.
another thing I like, is that you see this recurring. Like there are stories in this that he could have touched on, but because he wanted to tell something completely different and buck the trend, he torments himself by trying to make something out of, like, he's making nothing. He's trying to make
see
nothing
the forest for the
out
trees.
of something that's actually there. Yeah. LaRoche says he judged his wife, but maybe he was being judged by God, since Hurricane Andrew destroyed his nursery not long after. LaRoche says it would have broken his heart to start another nursery. So when the Seminoles called, he jumped at the opportunity and wanted to do something amazing, like only sell endangered species, I guess.
Guess that's what he meant by that. Like, I just want to sell things that people can't find anywhere else.
Cultivate. No, he wants to cultivate the ghost orchid, right? He wants to actually grow it and sell it, and so it doesn't have to be harvested out of the wild.
They're extremely hard to grow.
Yeah.
Regular orchids are. I can't imagine these ones.
When she first gets in his van and he's talking to her and he asks her why he's doing what he's doing, his whole thing is that he wants to be able to grow them himself so they're no longer endangered. And then it would stop people from trying to poach them. That's when she writes down. Yeah,
he's like a conservationist.
Yeah. So I think that's what he meant, is he had this opportunity now to use them to go get these orchids that he could then bring back and grow so people can enjoy them and not have to go try and poach them out of the swamps. We see Susan in a restaurant with Valerie from the beginning of the movie, where she tells Susan she loves the story about LaRoche, and Valerie asks if they can option her story into a film. Susan is blown away by the idea and says it's exciting.
But I don't know how the hell you're going to adapt this. It's crazy.
I bet she never thought in a million years this movie is what would come from that meeting.
You fucking imagine, like, you had that meeting and then...
Oh my God, I'm going to be played by Meryl Streep.
Oh my God,
awesome.
this is going to be
screenplay.
Awesome.
I'm a drug addict murderer.
This is not some fat guy who masturbates to women he just talks to.
He just made up a whole extra story about me.
Valerie says Susan doesn't need to worry about writing the screenplay. She probably should have actually worried about it, since they have writers who could do it. And we cut to Charlie sitting in a mess of books, notes, and I think a bottle of his own urine while trying to figure out how to adapt the book Susan wrote. Charlie gets a call from his agent who says it's been 13 weeks since Valerie gave him the job of writing the adaptation and is anxious to see a draft. We cut to another fantasy of Valerie reading Charlie's script while they're in bed together. And after finishing, she calls him a genius over and over before making love to him. I wonder how awkward that scene was. We cut back to see Charlie whacking it in bed. And after finishing, he reads a piece from his screenplay about one of the orchid hunters he mentioned during the sequence we saw of Susan describing the dangerous history of orchid hunting, having shit-stained trousers due to dysentery. I don't know, there's so many levels of meta to this movie.
It's just like watching him describe a scene that's already been in the movie, like while he's like writing the movie. Like it's like he's coming up with it as we're watching it.
Yeah. He realizes he's fucked since he has the weekend to finish the script. And next we see him cobbling together a bunch of random scenes that we've seen so far, complete with LaRoche calling himself a crazy white man. And we see Charlie wake up, this time not during masturbation, in a cold sweat.
One of the few times we see him wake up not jacking off.
Not jerking it. Not from jerking. We then cut to him in his agent's office after hearing Donald having fun with the makeup girl in the other room. Charlie's agent is played by the great Ron Livingston, who barely listens to Charlie rambling about how he has no idea how to write this movie, but instead ogles some chick and says,
See her? I fucked her up the ass.
He says he's kidding, then says maybe he can help him write the screenplay. And Charlie just kind of stares at him.
Charlie, he's only in like 2 scenes, but Ron Livingston just kills it.
Yeah, he nails every scene he's in this movie. I'd fuck her up the ass. Charlie reads a review of Susan's book from a newspaper that says, there's not nearly enough about LaRoche to fill a book, so Orlean digresses in long passages, blah, blah, blah. No narrative really unites these passages. Charlie says he can't structure the book into a movie, and his agent looks at another girl in the office and says,
Oh, man. I'd fuck her up the ass.
no wonder Lumberg was always riding this guy to get his work done. Yeah, I'm gonna need you coming on the weekend.
His boss is Peter Lowe.
Simple. TPS.
Quick fact, Ron Livingston's character Marty Bowen was inspired by the real talent agent of the same name. Bowen was screenwriter Charlie Kaufman's agent, and despite Kaufman's reservations that his script for Being John Malkovich couldn't get sold, Bowman bet that he could and did.
I can't even imagine what he thought.
He's like,
Yeah.
Why,
really?
dude?
I tell you one story about fucking a chick in the ass and you turn it into my whole character?
I believed in
I'd
you with
fuck
your
her in
other
the
script,
ass.
man.
Yeah, dude, I supported you. I got you where you are, and this is how you reward me?
It makes me wonder if there's any truth to that portrayal, or if he's just exaggerating and just using his agent to mirror what people think all Hollywood agents are like.
Yeah. But it is funny because, like, he's very competent.
Yeah.
It's just he's, like, kind of a dick.
Again, it's like, oh, who the hell's the wrong one here? If this guy's successful in his life and Charlie's
Yeah.
Charlie.
Yeah.
You know?
Charlie again desperately tries to get across that the book has no story, so Marty just says to make one up. Charlie says he doesn't want to do that this time, like on Being John Malkovich, because he's working with somebody else's material. He says he wanted to grow as a writer and do something simple and to show people how amazing flowers are. His agent says, "Are they amazing?" And Charlie looks at him unsure of himself and says, "I don't know. I think they are."
I think it's more questioning. Like,
It's more questioning. Like,
yeah, he's like,
I think they are.
I don't know. I think
Yeah.
they are. Even he doesn't know.
Yeah, he does it. He does
They're
kind of shrug.
interestingly enough to make amazing, and he's writing the script.
Fuck, maybe they aren't. I don't know.
Charlie asks his agent to get him out of writing this movie, and Marty says he can't since Charlie has been stringing the execs along for months, and to bail now would be a terrible career move. Then Charlie exasperatedly, yeah. Then Charlie exasperatedly slumps on the couch, and his agent asks, "Do you want me to fuck you up the ass?" By the way, this is the exact point in the film where he starts making shit up about LaRoche and Susan's relationship. So it does kind of sink in. I mean, maybe I do have to make shit up.
It's so like, I feel like you could teach a class just on this movie.
Like what not to do in screenwriting.
It's just so complicated, and like all of these different parts like stringing together, and like the meta is just so meshed into the movie. It's nuts. I mean, like you sit down and break down this whole thing. It's crazy.
I watched this movie for an English class in college and had to write a paper on it. So yeah, you can. My teacher was a big fan of it.
It's, I mean, some of the most brilliant writing that I think I've ever seen in a film. I mean, just the balls, like I said, to fucking, this is what you came up with after reading that book. It's crazy.
That's kind of why they hired him, though. They hired him, and I think they even say that at one point, like, you're gonna, like, you hired Charlie Kaufman to write a Charlie Kaufman movie. It's gonna be weird. It's gonna be different.
Yeah,
it's gonna be unexpected.
It's definitely that.
Mm-hmm.
It's starring him.
Charlie comes home to find his brother busily working on his own script, which is coming along amazingly. Unlike Charlie's, Donald rambles on about what Robert McKee said for him to do in his seminar. Charlie says, "You sound like you're in a cult." But Donald argues with his Oscar-nominated brother that Bob knows good writing techniques. Quick fact, in this scene, Charlie comes home and checks his mail. He's in front of a mirror, and Donald is talking to him from behind. The reflection of Donald in the mirror is actually the real Charlie Kaufman. I wondered if that, I knew it wasn't Cage, and I wondered if they did throw Kaufman into this at any point, or if it was Nick's brother, because I couldn't really fucking tell.
Yeah, that's the real Charlie Kaufman.
That's so funny.
Out of focus, so you can't really tell, but you can tell that it's not Cage.
Yeah, you could definitely tell it's not Cage, just like we talked about in the swamp. You could tell that's not Nick leaning up.
Trick photography.
Himself. Yeah. Donald says he also printed a copy of McKee's 10 Commandments of writing and taped it over Charlie's work area, which prompts his brother to rip it off the wall and crumple it up while Donald watches from the hallway. Donald says, "You shouldn't have done that," and then laughs and says, "Because it's extremely helpful." I love that moment. It's almost like he's going to murder him.
That one is like, I need to know how to kill people for my script, man.
Yeah, or like he is part of a cult and he just disrespected his cult leader's work.
It's just like so disrespectful.
Yeah.
Like even if you're like, "Oh, this is fucking beneath me," you'd be like, "All right, my brother tried to do something helpful for me."
Yeah,
like,
right.
You just crumple it up.
Yeah. Donald says he's going to have the characters in his screenplay sing "Happy Together" to break the tension. And Charlie says, "I haven't slept in a week, Donald. I need to go to bed." Donald says, "Oh, okay. Good night." While continuing to sit on Charlie's floor.
Okay. Good night.
We cut to Susan Orlean on the phone with LaRoche, and we see that his latest passion is porn. He says, "I'm training myself on the internet. It's fascinating. I'm doing pornography. It's amazing how much these suckers will pay for photographs of chicks." Susan says
I feel like they'll doesn't matter if they're fat or ugly or I don't remember what he says.
Missing teeth.
Missing teeth.
I hate to say it, but like he knows how to read the trends, because I bet he would have made, or if that's real, like if LaRoche really did go down that path, which it's Florida, I believe it.
I think
he
so,
probably made some really good money selling pictures of naked women on the internet.
Late 90s, getting into the porn game. Yeah.
Probably cleaned up. This man's a thinker. Susan says that sounds good, then tells him she desperately wants to see a ghost orchid in the wild.
He describes, I'm doing porn now. She's like, oh, that sounds good. It's kind of, this is really like the first thing that just seems different.
Yeah.
This is Charlie starting to put in the seeds of there actually being a relationship between her and LaRoche.
Mm-hmm. Charlie reads a passage from Susan's book about how being passionate about something whittles the world down to a more manageable size. He says she has such sweet, sad insights that are so true, and then imagines Susan in his bed with him. And we again get to watch him tug one out. Yeah, there's a collective, ew, at that scene from me and Shadow. Afterwards, he tells Susan's picture in the book jacket that he doesn't know how to write a movie based on her book and is afraid he'll disappoint her. He says she's written a beautiful book and that he can't sleep. He's losing his hair and he's fat and repulsive. Sounds like what I say before I go to bed every night.
Fat and repulsive.
The voice of Susan tells him to whittle down the story and focus on one thing. She says to find the one thing he cares passionately about and write about that. Charlie gives a big smile, and we next see him in the kitchen dictating again, but this time it's all about Susan Orlean and how desperate she is to find love, even while sleeping next to her insensitive husband. He uses her line to open the script with, I suppose I do have one unembarrassed passion. I want to know how it feels to care about something passionately. Donald and Caroline come into the kitchen after a racucious night of lovemaking.
Racucious?
Wow.
Raccoon. Raucous. Goddamn.
Donald and Caroline come into the kitchen after a raucous night of lovemaking, and Charlie greets them cheerfully for a change. Donald says, "You seem chipper." Charlie says he finally knows where to go with the script. Caroline says it's like a brain factory in their house, since Donald's script about a guy who is the killer, detective, and victim at the same time is equally as brilliant as whatever Charlie's cooking up. You guys got such brains for knowing. Yeah, I kind of felt like they did her dirty with that. It's a brain factory in here. Anyways,
She's just trying to be supportive, you know?
Yeah, I know, but they just like he couldn't have written her a nicer way of describing how intelligent they are.
I mean, maybe she thinks that Donald's fucking script is just as good as Being John Malkovich, which is the movie that she literally works on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, she's the makeup girl, so maybe she didn't even read the script. She doesn't even know what the movie's about. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, could you imagine working on that movie not having read the script?
Yeah.
You'd be like, what the fuck is going on?
So everyone is John Malkovich? What?
Donald says he's adding a chase sequence into this movie, which will be the killer fleeing on horseback with the victim while the cop chases them on a motorcycle. And it's like a battle between motors and horses, like technology versus horses.
I love the delivery of that line is so fucking good.
And it's like a battle between motors and horses, like technology versus horse.
And then they like hold on it for long enough to where it's just hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Charlie asks if all the characters are still all one person, since they're all chasing each other somehow. And Caroline says, well, that's the big payoff. Rather than
so she is stupid.
Yeah. She would have given this movie a C. Rather than scoff at the idiotic shit like usual, Charlie instead says it sounds exciting, and Donald thanks his brother for finally saying something nice rather than say that's the dumbest shit he's ever heard. God damn it, this scene. Charlie goes to a restaurant to pick up food, and Valerie, the woman who commissioned him to write the screenplay, spots him and says that she's there with Susan Orlean. Valerie says Susan is dying to meet him, but he says he can't since it's hard to write about someone that you've already been writing about after you meet them.
And jacked off you.
Yeah. He awkwardly excuses himself and says he'd love to meet with Susan at a later date, and he runs out of the restaurant without his food. I'm glad you pointed that out too, because I was like, hey, he left his food.
Yeah. You think he went back for it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, because
I
the next scene he's eating a sandwich or something. So I don't know. I
And
do
he
like
asks the waitress out.
The hostess was like, you left your food.
So
Do you like orchids?
You like orchids?
I do love, like, this is one of my favorite scenes of the movie of Nick's performance, because his posture and like his body is just so fucking uncomfortable, and I thought he nailed, especially when he sees her and he's like trying to figure out like, should I leave, should I not leave, and he's just like doing like this weird kind of like movement back and forth.
He starts out like very confident and happy, and then as soon as he spots her, it just switches on a dime.
He melts instantly. Yeah, his physicality, like we talk about all the time, it's so underrated, and that was one of my favorite parts of his performance. It's just how he
and you can totally
physically
tell Donald and Charlie apart just in the way that he carries each character.
Yeah. I almost wonder if the fat suit that he has for Donald is actually thinner than the fat suit for Charlie, because he has more of a hunch and is more slumped over, and I think he was intentionally playing the character as more fat and slobbish than Donald, because Donald's more confident.
Mm-hmm. Donald actually stands up straight when Charlie hunches forward. Yeah,
so good, man.
Quick fact:
the fucking pianist, man. Come on. Adrian Brody was good, but Nick Cage was better. Come on.
Look, guys, I stand by this. That movie is not as good as everybody thinks it is. It was just one of those Hollywood movies where everybody has to suck each other off because of
I mean,
it's
very
like the
important stuff to talk about, yes. But we had already done like 20 Holocaust movies in a row.
Exactly.
Do you think like when somebody's nominated and then they see that some other Holocaust movie got nominated for the same category, they're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, 100%.
We talked about extras on another episode, but it was the exact same thing that like, it was like just, I think it was, Kate Winslet's character was I'm going to win an Oscar for this for sure. Fucking Hollywood just eats this shit up.
Yeah. It's the truth. They do. Like, that movie's not as good as everybody remembers it being. I think a lot of the hype and everything like built up this image in everyone's head and this memory of it.
Yeah.
I know. I'm sorry. Like, his performance was good, right? It was good.
It was great. Yeah.
I don't think it was better than Cage in this movie. And I stand by that. Not just because we're huge Cage fans, but he played two different characters and actually played two different characters. I mean, they were so different, and he nailed it. And his like the physicality, like we'll get into all that shit later. But man, it really does validate his comments about Hollywood not liking him and not wanting to see him succeed.
Well, think about the fact that Pig didn't even get like
that's
on the radar
one
of the Academy. So, but it was like. It's basically a pay to play to get into the
Oscars. Exactly. I was just about to say that.
They obviously didn't have any money to make Pig. Very small budget.
It took a long time for anybody to even really start talking about that movie. And now look at the director. Like, the director's got a lot of positive buzz behind him as they've distanced themselves from Pig. I mean, he's directing the next A Quiet Place, whatever the and
Quiet Place 4. I don't know.
And I think he'll continue to get jobs and do really well. But man, it just kind of feels like that's a huge snub not to even bring it up, like not even to mention it around the Oscar time.
Didn't even get like a Golden Globe nomination. Nothing.
I think it only got international recognition. I want to say it got nominated for some international awards, but that's it.
I feel like we're critical enough on this show to understand the difference between like an Oscar-worthy film and a film that's obviously not. And Pig was 100% worthy of an Oscar nomination for Cage.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right,
and a Best Picture. I thought it should have been a Best Picture nomination, too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like we've had a lot of heavy hitters the last couple of years when it comes to really good movies.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think between all of the movies that we've done, which is like 42 movies at this point, I feel like only those two, Pig and Adaptation, I could see Cage getting an Oscar win for.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Maybe Raising Arizona. Just I don't know. If you were going quirky,
Yeah, comedy. Like if you're going after a comedy, quirky comedy. Yeah, I agree. Quick fact: Charlie Kaufman never actually met Susan Orlean while writing the screenplay for the film. The first time he encountered her in person was over a year into production when Orlean visited the set during filming, and Nicolas Cage introduced her to Kaufman. That's funny. The first thing she said was, "You have no idea how embarrassed I am right now." To which Kaufman responded with, "Not as embarrassed as me," before running off set. The two did not meet for another year after that.
Wow.
He's exactly the character that we see in the movie.
I hope that's what
he
she
ran off
realized.
to
Like,
masturbate.
he's in his trailer and Donald comes in. Donald, get out! I'm trying to nap.
Leave me alone, God damn it! It was actually Cage dressed as Donald.
Yeah, kid shows up with a sandwich.
I just wanted to run some ideas by you.
I had some ideas on the character.
Oh, man. We see Charlie in his car where he goes back into full panic mode since he's pathetic and the only thing he's qualified to write about is himself and his own self-loathing, and it's clear that he has an epiphany. Cut to him at home with a tape recorder and he says, "We open on Charlie Kaufman, fat, old, bald, repulsive, sitting in a Hollywood restaurant across from Valerie Thomas, a lovely, statuesque film executive." He goes on to describe the scene we previously saw of him sweating his ass off in front of her, then literally describes himself speaking into his tape recorder as we watch Nicolas Cage play Charlie Kaufman, talking to the tape recorder, pretending to be Charlie Kaufman, saying the lines he just said into the tape recorder. My fucking brain is breaking at this point, guys. It's getting real meta.
So many layers.
Donald walks in on Charlie. Donald walks in on Charlie recounting jerking off to Susan's picture on the book jacket, playing back on the tape recorder. And Donald says his script is finished.
It's just like, oh shit. Stop this. He's like so excited, like writing it.
Yeah.
And then Donald walks in. Oh, fuck.
Kaufman, repugnant, ridiculous. Jerks off to the book jacket photo of Susan Orlean. What do you want?
He seems more embarrassed then than he does when he's actually gets caught jerking off. Donald asked Charlie to show it to his "I'd fuck her up the ass" agent. Donald says his script is called The Three and thanks Charlie for his idea about the killer, but he changed it to the killer cutting off body parts and making the victim eat them.
Which is even worse because like he's the killer and
Yeah.
Donald says Caroline had this tattoo of a snake swallowing its own tail. Charlie cuts him off saying Ouroboros. So Donald says, "I don't know what that means." So Charlie says, "The snake, it's called Ouroboros." To which Donald says, "I don't think so." Donald says it's a great
he just keeps going. He's like, "I don't think so." But really what happens is
Donald says it's a great twist because the killer is also eating himself since they're all one person.
so fucking dumb. Genius at the same time.
Yeah. I love the character of Donald.
Yeah.
He's so great in this movie. Charlie says, "I'm insane. I'm Ouroboros." And Donald says, "I don't know what that word means." Charlie says, "I've written myself into my screenplay." And Donald says, "That's kind of weird, huh?" Charlie says it's self-indulgent, narcissistic,
Solipsistic.
What?
Solipsistic.
Solipsistic. Solipsistic. Solipsistic. Solipsistic. Solip, right?
Good enough.
Say the P. Good.
Solipsistic and pathetic. This is going to be another fucking Dostoevsky.
You got it pretty quick though.
Yeah.
Then he calls himself fat and pathetic since he's too timid to speak to the woman who wrote the book, and he sucks. Then Donald asks if he's in the script, and Charlie says he's going to New York to meet her.
Am I in the script?
So, yeah. It's so crazy when you stop and think about all this being in Charlie Kaufman's head as he's writing the script for this, as we see it. It's just Ouroboros. It just eats itself and circles back on itself.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very, very unconventional screenplay, but fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
And like just like a fucking master course in script writing.
It really is.
But at the same time, like this breaks every rule.
Oh, yeah.
And you shouldn't follow these
Yeah.
writing conventions either. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I can see why your professor wanted you guys to watch this and break it down, because it is, this is a master class in screenwriting.
Yeah, that class, I mean, changed the way I look at movies in general. Because before that, I don't know, I wasn't really into movies. Never really have been all that much. I mean, I am more now, but it was that like, oh, you can take them and actually look at them like you look at books or other literature or other works of art, which is a weird epiphany to have because you think, duh. But
I had similar classes dealing specifically with sci-fi and horror, like two different classes. One was just focusing on sci-fi and the other one was focusing specifically on horror. And it was all about getting to what the author actually was talking about. And almost always it's about sex or, you know, the male gaze and like, you know, looking at Alien and like, it's a penis. So the penis is a black rapist that's like coming and to kill the white woman. And like, it's just, there's so many layers to the movies if you really dial them back. And
yeah, Alien's a great one to do that too.
Yeah.
There's so much about like reproduction and motifs and sexual assault and
Yeah. So it's never just what you see on the surface. There's always another layer, even on the shitty movies. But the great movies do it so well that you don't even realize that that's what they're doing.
I can't remember what I was watching or listening to, but first, I can't even remember who the fuck it was that said it, but they were talking about like every movie, every book, every story that's ever told always has one of three things: love, sex, and death. And they challenged everybody to go watch, read, and or whatever, and try to find a piece of media that does not have one of those themes in it, because that's what drives the human consciousness. And I was like, oh fuck yeah, like subconsciously I knew that, but when you say it like that, it's like, yeah, you look at everything, you break it down, and there's all those themes are always in there. And sometimes, like you said, like an Alien, it's not in your face, like you have to like really kind of look at it and think about it and analyze it, and then you find out, oh yeah, fuck yeah, like you said, it's about reproduction. And I like movies that make you think, and that's what I like about this movie is it forces you to kind of stop and actually analyze what the fuck's going on, because it's crazy.
And that might be why people didn't really love it in the cinema score, is like, I didn't want to think.
yeah.
Where are the robots? Where's that Anne Frank robot? Donald says not to get mad at him for saying so, but Robert McKee is having a seminar in New York this weekend. So if he's stuck, he should drop by while Charlie gives him the fuck that look. We cut to Susan and John in his van, where she tells him about them wanting to make a movie out of his story. LaRoche asks, who's going to play me? And she says, probably that guy who shot Kevin Spacey in the head after realizing he was gay in American Beauty.
Not realizing that Kevin Spacey was gay.
Yeah, I was
But
like,
the character,
The
hopefully
character
that's not
of
a-
the
it's like,
general.
hopefully that's not a foreshadowing for real life.
No. It was Chris Cooper's character
Chris
realized
Cooper,
he was gay.
He was gay. That's why he
And
hated
he's
the
been
gays.
repressing himself so much. Yeah.
And he hated Kevin Spacey for making him realize that, and because he was in love with Kevin Spacey, and because he knew Kevin Spacey's a piece of shit.
And also gay. But those aren't related.
No.
God.
He just happens to be a gay guy who's a piece of shit.
Yes.
Yes.
Very big distinction between these things.
We see Susan and LaRoche in the swamp hunting for a ghost orchid, where she narrates that it's intoxicating to be around somebody so alive. Ultimately, though, she's left disappointed when LaRoche can't track down the elusive flower after hours of searching. They get lost, and John gets frustrated when he doesn't have all the answers for her, and eventually calls her a fucking leech that's attached herself to him, sucked him dry, and spit him out. Then says for her to get her own fucking life and her own fucking interests, and calls her a spoiled bitch.
Which just kind of comes out of nowhere. She doesn't even say anything to him.
Yeah.
And this apparently was part of the book, right? Because this is how the book ends: is she doesn't find the flower, and that's it. Kind of like she's left disappointed, but that's what life is like.
Right.
To me,
Once
that
she
was
sees
him.
the truth behind the character, all that veneer falls off. And he's just some yokel.
I think there's a little bit more to it. I think it's more of him projecting his insecurities.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, that too.
And
To me, it was more like that shine's worn off. Like everything presented up to this point is like, he's an expert in his field. He's like a idiot savant, whatever you want to call it. He's a genius, and this is like, no, I mean, he gets lost in this swamp that he's supposedly been to hundreds of times, and then just breaks down and calls her a fucking entitled bitch and swears off a bunch of stuff forever.
right.
Yeah.
So
Because he's trying to impress her, and he fails to do so, and he can see and hear in her voice how disappointed she is, and then that, like you said, like that veil is gone. They are who they are, and he doesn't know how to handle his emotions, which is why he says "fuck it" to everything that he's passionate about. And so he just turns on a dime like that on her and just explodes on her.
Which, when you think about it, is interesting because like that is a climax to a story.
It is.
It's just not a Hollywood climax. A climax to a Hollywood story. So
That's
you
real
can
life.
see why Charlie Kaufman had problems trying to take that idea and get that into a movie. Like, it's not going to fly, but he has to do it somehow. But he can't ultimately.
She looks devastated and says life seemed to be filled with things that were just like the ghost's orchid. Wonderful to imagine, easy to fall in love with, but a little fantastic and fleeting and out of reach. They finally find the van, and Susan is filthy, exhausted, and ready to close the LaRoche chapter of her life for good.
So I'm guessing that's the actual end of that story.
Yeah, because he reads that part to McKee later on, and he's like, well, what comes after that?
Yeah. That's right.
That's not a movie.
That's what the story
You don't have a third act.
Yeah.
Was this dark?
Cut to a TV screen with just a bunch of garbled images on it and humming sounds.
Screaming
Orlean had
in
a stroke
Arabic.
and then died. The end.
Then there's a grave. What?
Charlie arrives in New York, where he spots Susan in the elevator of the New Yorker building, but he's too chicken shit to talk to her. Marty, Charlie's agent, calls him in his hotel and asks if it's been helpful talking to Susan, and Charlie lies, saying it's been okay. Marty says Valerie is breathing down his neck about the script, and Charlie says, can't rush inspiration. Marty
I
then
just
says,
wonder like how much he actually has written at this point.
Right. Can you imagine being Marty? Like, fuck it. I'm getting nothing on Monday, aren't I?
God, this douchebag.
yeah. I think he tells Donald when he asks Donald for help, like, all I have are a bunch of like scribbled on pages. Like I've cut a bunch of shit that I've written.
Bunch of false starts and
yeah, a bunch
stuff
of false
we've
starts.
seen.
Yeah.
It's like the bunch of stuff we've seen in the movie, just those scenes
yeah, pretty much.
in a cohesive narrative.
Yeah. Marty then says Donald's script, The Three, is fantastic and the best script he's read all year. Charlie has a mild panic attack, and Marty says he's going to sell it for a shitload and suggests Charlie bring Donald in to help him write the Orchid script. Marty says Donald is really goddamn amazing at structure, and Charlie hangs up on him. We see Charlie hit rock bottom, freaking out in his hotel room with notes strewn everywhere before heading to Robert McKee's lecture in New York. Charlie monologues in voiceover about what a pathetic loser he is, since he's looking for an easy answer / shortcut for his script. And just as he's about to get up to leave, McKee says, and God help you if you use voiceover in your work, my friends. God help you. It's flaccid, sloppy writing. Any idiot can use voiceover to explain the thoughts of a character. Quick fact, in his renowned screenwriter seminars, Robert McKee now makes note that he is not against the use of voiceover narration, despite what Charlie Kaufman says. His voiceover narration must add to the story, not describe what's already being seen on the screen. Otherwise, there's no reason for it. Robert McKee was the one who suggested Brian Cox to play him. If you get to cast anybody, that is a fucking perfect choice.
Think about like what the balls in that request.
Yeah. That's
I want to be Brian Cox.
I love Brian Cox.
Okay.
And his voice, man, his voice is so great and demanding, and
He's the only one who
draws you in.
do justice to me.
He was so perfect for that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I watched this movie 17 years ago, and I only watched it once, and that Brian Cox's scenes like the only ones that I actually remember from like crystal clear. Like I still hear the delivery of them over however many years later. 17.
Yeah.
Don't have any bloody use for it.
Yeah, specifically that one.
It's funny. I had seen this movie when it came out, and then I was in college. I was in a screenwriting class, and I had to read Story by Robert McKee, and I totally forgot that it was the same thing. So like when I watched Adaptation after I had finished college, I was like, oh fuck, that's that book that I read.
Yeah. I think about that whenever I'm watching a bad movie like Arsenal. Like what are you trying to tell me? Like, this is just shit happening. Like, I haven't got any bloody use for it.
Fucking time.
Yeah.
If you miss the point of Arsenal, I'm sorry. The whole point is you'll do anything for your brother, even when he treats you like a piece of shit your whole life.
Yeah, even if you hate his script.
That. While watching Arsenal, ideas. Was I thought of that? Like, what am I watching?
Yeah. Robert McKee's pretty brilliant. Definitely worth a read if you're even if you're just into story and structure and stuff. I don't even think you need to be into scripts and stuff, but it's just a really, really great writer.
Later during a Q&A period, Charlie asks, what if the writer is attempting to create a story where nothing much happens, more a reflection of the real world? And Brian Cox launches into a brilliant monologue about how asinine it is to say that nothing much happens in the world. He asks if Charlie is out of his fucking mind since people are murdered every day. There's genocide, war, corruption every day somewhere in the world. Somebody sacrifices their life to save someone else. People find and lose love. A child watches their mother beaten to death on the steps of a church, etc., etc. Before saying,
if you can't find that stuff in life, then you, my friend, don't know crap about life. And why the fuck are you wasting my 2 precious hours with your movie? I don't have any use for it. I don't have any bloody use for it.
That was a great monologue.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's true. I think a lot of people need to hear that too. Like if you can't find things in life that bring you joy, or if you don't find life interesting, you got blinders on. Like you need to realize that and look around, because there's a lot happening in life. And I know it's easy to put fucking blinders on, especially with how crazy the news can be sometimes, but you got to take the good with the bad. Well, I guess put it this way. You got to take the bad with the good to really cherish and appreciate what's going on.
Yeah. It's like Bob Ross always said, like you have to be able to have the dark in order for the light to shine through.
Happy little accidents.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Charlie looks at him like a beaten puppy before slumping back into his chair after saying, okay, thanks.
Like just that powerful, commanding performance, and then it just ends with him like staring at him like, okay, thanks.
I wrote being John Malkovich.
Outside, Charlie waits for McKee and says, I'm the guy you yelled at this morning. Robert says, you have to be more specific. Charlie asks if they could talk, since what Bob said to him shook him to the bone, not just because of the implications on his script, but on his choices as a human. They head to a bar where Charlie reads Bob passages from Susan's book, and McKee wants to know how it ends, but Charlie explains that it has no ending. She never saw the ghost orchid, and he wanted to present it as it's written. McKee says, that's not a movie. You got to go back and put it in the drama. McKee
Which I feel like he did. Like, there's little things that it feels like he went back and added in the early part of the movie to set up this third act.
Yeah.
Or at least tease the threads that became the third act.
The third act, yeah. McKee tells him the secret is to have an amazing third act, since if you wow them in the end, you got to hit. You can have flaws, problems, but wow them in the end, and you've got to hit. Find an ending. Don't cheat. And don't you dare bring in a Deus Ex Machina. Your characters must change, and the change must come from them. Do that and you'll be fine.
Which is like, just think about every movie we talked about where it's like, well, the third act just fucking fell apart and like brings the whole movie down.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. If you stick the landing, you can forgive so much in the rest of the movie. Like, I feel like some of the movies that we've seen were really solid until the third act.
Yeah.
Every fucking movie by what's his face?
Michael Bay.
Well, yeah, that.
I was just joking.
Paul Schrader's
Yeah.
third acts, at least in the Cage movies that we've talked about. I mean, he stuck the landing and bringing out the dead. I feel like
he stuck the landing. As much as we shit on Schrader, he stuck the landing and bringing out the dead. I really do feel like I don't know if that was him or Scorsese. Doesn't matter. The third act tied everything together and stuck the landing.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I'd say it's him. He's the screenwriter or the script writer.
Yeah, Scorsese can change things to make it work, or have him rewrite shit that he didn't like in the original draft. But it landed.
It's just Tom Sizemore just has a stroke, and we follow his consciousness. Can you go back?
Maybe instead of him stroking out, he just beats the shit out of ambulance.
How about that? Beats the shit out of a homeless person. That seems like something you'd like to do. We'll make him black.
I'm on it.
Yeah. Fuck yeah,
you're
finally.
Talking my language. Charlie tearfully hugs him before McKee says, "Have you taken my course before?" To which Charlie says, "My brother did." And McKee says, Julius and God damn it. And Philip Epstein wrote Casablanca, which he calls the greatest screenplay ever. What an unfortunate last name.
Yeah.
Pretty common name. One guy kind of ruined it, you know.
Yeah. Nowadays, it's not a great last name to have.
Thankfully, Hitler was a made-up name because it was like a mispronunciation when they immigrated into Germany.
Really?
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't his. I think Adolf's dad was the first one to have the Hitler name, and then after him, the whole rest of the bloodline just changed their name.
Kind of ruined Adolf, though.
Back to what it was.
Oh, yeah, Adolf.
And mustaches that are like...
and Charlie Chaplin stashes.
Yeah.
Act 3, The Resolution.
Charlie calls his brother from New York, and Donald answers with, "Great writer's residence." Charlie congratulates his brother on the success of his screenplay, and Donald thanks his brother for all of his help. Charlie says he wasn't any help at all, which is kind of true. And Donald says he let him stay at his place, and Charlie's integrity inspired him to try in the first place. So he was an inspiration without knowing he was an inspiration. You let me sleep on your futon. Donald turns around and says, Catherine says she really wants to play Cassie, who is the victim in The Three. And Charlie says, Catherine Keener? Catherine Keener's in my house? Then we see Caroline and Catherine Keener playing Boggle. I love Donald's line there. It's like, yeah, we're playing Boggle. Charles asked Donald if he wants to come to New York and hang out with him, and even asked Donald if he'd come take a look at his script. And Donald is over the moon at the idea. And next thing we see is the two brothers in Charlie's hotel room, where Donald reads The Orchid Thief on the floor, of course. Because of his back. Quick fact, when Charlie and Donald meet in New York City, Charlie asks Donald to help him finish the script. This marks the exact transition point where the movie switches from being Charlie's screenplay, an original film that consciously avoids cliches, to being Donald's screenplay, which shamelessly employs tired Hollywood tropes like sex, guns, stakeouts, car chases, and maudlin speeches like the one Donald delivers to Charlie in the swamp. Fucking brilliant, man. It's just so... I mean, like, he didn't have a third act. So this was his way of creating a Hollywood-style third act to his movie, was writing his fake twin to come in and finish it for him. Genius. And, like I said, the balls to turn this fucking thing in.
Yeah.
I can't even, the first reaction had to have been like, what the fuck is this? This is not the Orchid Thief. What are you talking about? Donald says the script kind of makes fun of me, huh? Like, this script kind of makes fun of me, doesn't it? Charlie says he's sorry, and Donald says he doesn't mind since it's funny.
I love that Donald read the script, and Charlie wouldn't once read anything that Donald wrote. But he's
immediately read it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without hesitation, was just like, yes, I'll be on the next plane. He asked how the great Donald would end the script. I love the great Donald. Like, and Donald says he thinks there's more behind the words in the book and that Susan is actually hiding something, reading into the subtext. There does seem to be, like, based on the first two acts, unless he went back and added that drama, that there is some more to her interactions with LaRoche, and she actually does find him charming and attractive in some way, at least. Yeah. She does call him deeply handsome, aside from the fact that he's missing his front teeth.
I don't know if you have this in your quick facts, but she's been asked time and time again if she ever did have a relationship with LaRoche. And she says no. Like, she's adamant that there was nothing, like, it was completely platonic. That was all just added into the film. So I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not, but it does. I mean, it
doesn't happen until this part of the movie where everything's made up.
That's the point.
It does make sense that she'd be telling the truth because the love story doesn't come into right now.
Yeah. Did you ever ride him while doing drugs? No, for the 50th time, no. He suggests going and talking to Susan, but Charlie says he's too scared. So Donald says he'll go in his place since she won't even know the difference, which is true. Charlie says Donald needs to be exactly like him and not be his asshole goofball self. And Donald says, I'm not an asshole. Like, no, what I mean is no flirting, no bad jokes, and don't laugh how you laugh. He's a real scumbag. Yeah. Donald promises not to laugh and says it's an honor that people will think that he's Charlie Kaufman. Then we cut to Donald laughing his ass off while telling bad jokes to Susan Orlean in her office, where he asks if she has kept in touch with LaRoche. Donald says he felt an attraction in the subtext, and Susan says their relationship was strictly reporter-subject, and intimacy might have evolved, and she was extremely interested in everything LaRoche had to say, but once the book ended, that is when their relationship ended as well, which I'm sure was actually what she probably said. She's kind of like, you could tell that she kind of thinks he's an idiot in this scene and like just wants to get out of this interview. I wonder how she would have reacted to the real Charlie Kaufman in that. Because I feel like somebody who writes for the New Yorker would see the difference between Donald and Charlie right off the bat. Donald thinks she's lying, then asks her, if you could have dinner with one historical personage, living or dead, who would it be? While giving her a goofy ass look. He's like, pen in his mouth. Susan says she'd have dinner with Einstein or Jesus. And back at the hotel, Donald says she's lying.
She rolls her eyes.
Yeah.
Or Jesus,
like,
I guess.
What a stupid question.
Yeah, just imagine asking somebody who interviews people for a living that as your final question.
Donald tells Charlie she said everything right. Too right. And Charlie says maybe it's because she was telling the truth. Then he asks if his brother embarrassed him, and Donald says people who answer everything right are liars, and everyone says Jesus or Einstein. And Charlie asks, what do you mean, Jesus or Einstein? Why would you ask her that question? You know. Donald suggests they spy on Susan and then start singing Happy Together. Again, the meta just gets deeper and deeper the whole way through. That's what Donald wanted to add to his screenplay, and he's added it to this screenplay. He tries to get his brother to sing along, and Charlie is beside himself. Get it?
God damn it.
We cut to Donald watching Susan out a window in a building near her apartment. I originally thought it was the New Yorker building, but I'm pretty sure it's her apartment because her husband comes in. And like, why would her husband be at the New Yorker? He's watching with binoculars, and Charlie nervously stands by, keeping guard. Like, what is that building? Is that somebody's apartment building?
It's like they went to a neighboring apartment building.
Yeah,
and somehow
that's what
got
I
up.
thought.
We see Susan crying in her office, and Donald spots a plane ticket and can somehow read it despite being in the adjacent building. This is where Donald's style really takes over.
Yeah, even like that. Like, why are they in this other building?
Yeah.
You don't even question it when you're watching it, but it's totally stuff that gets thrown into the third act of a thriller.
Yeah, exactly. The plane ticket that he can read with binoculars says she's heading to Miami the next day, and even has, like, you can read the time and everything. Donald theorizes it's to meet with LaRoche. Susan's husband enters, and she seems fidgety and weird, like she's hiding something. Back at the hotel, we see Charlie is reading Story by Robert McKee, while Donald is reading The Orchid Thief. They like completely switched sides. He's all on board with McKee's writing now. Donald asks if Charlie has checked out LaRoche's porn site, and on the front page is a topless photo of Susan. I wonder, do you think that was actually Meryl Streep, or do you think they got a body double? Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I read that somewhere.
Oh, really? You looked it up?
Because I was like, that doesn't look real. It looks Photoshopped, but
yeah. Charlie is shocked, and the two of them decide to follow Susan to Florida. We see Susan in her bed next to her husband, accompanied by the narration, "What I came to understand is that change is not a choice. Not for a species of plant and not for me. It happens, and you are different. Maybe the only distinction between the plant and me is that afterwards I lied about my change. I lied in my book. I pretended with my husband that everything was the same, but something happened in the swamp that day." That's true. I feel like exactly what the movie is talking about with adaptation happens to you in life, whether you want it to or not. Change happens, and it's like there's nothing you can really do to stop it, no matter how hard you try.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, that's what happens to Charlie.
Yes. Instead of ending the story with not finding the ghost orchid like in the actual book, they find it, and she's not impressed. It's just a flower, which I think is, would probably be the real reaction.
Right.
It's just, but those things are incredibly hard to find, especially if you play Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, I had flashbacks. That's fucking shit.
They are hard to find, though, like in real life, and it wouldn't be a shock that LaRoche wouldn't be able to find one, especially since he and the Seminoles were in there chopping out all of those endangered plants.
Yeah.
He cuts down the ghost orchid, and they head out of the swamp. In the van, LaRoche says his porn site is going to be big. And then admits that he and the Seminoles turned the plant into an hallucinogenic drug that they use as a ceremonial thing to get stoned. It's like he's trying to like make her feel better. And my porn site's going to be real big. Did I mention that we make drugs out of the thing?
Like you could hear Donald's voice coming in over the characters in this last. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Susan recalls the dude stroking her hair and seeing the sadness in her eyes from earlier, and it all makes sense now since that dude was obviously high as hell. LaRoche tries to convince her to try this orchid drug, but she says she's done with orchids the same way he was done with going into the ocean and fish. But back at the hotel, she says fuck it and decides to give an unknown Native American drug made from orchids in the swamp a little snort. Well, give it a shot. Because apparently LaRoche sent the package to her hotel room.
Right. Not suspicious.
Like at
this
this
is the
point,
height of
it's
the
like,
anthrax thing I thought going on.
Like it's just so ridiculous, and that's exactly Donald. Like what Donald would write into this third act.
Yeah. Suspend your belief of reality.
He sends her a package of drugs, and she snorts it without knowing what it is, how much she should take, etc. Like it's ridiculous. She snorts a line of this green stuff and then starts tripping out while brushing her teeth. She then starts harmonizing with a dial tone, and when LaRoche calls her to find out if she tried the drugs that he sent over, she's extremely happy to talk to him. I'm very happy now. She puts her feet up in the air and then hugs her leg while saying she's very happy. She gets him to hum a dial tone so that she can harmonize with it. And once they do it, she says, "That's fucking amazing." Next, we see her on the Joe Rogan podcast giving medical advice. Oh, wait. They talk all night, and she confesses to being lonely. And he says no one liked him as a kid, but he knew one day he'd meet someone who would just understand him. It's kind of beautiful, this little love story that he fucking made up completely.
Right. It's funny because even that, it's like a mix of Donald and Charlie. Like Donald writes the stupid stuff that adds the drama and the action, and then Charlie's writing the profound things like a love story.
Yeah,
Donald wouldn't be able to write that shit.
It's just so many levels in this movie. It's incredible. We see the two of them making love in John's smelly rape van somewhere near the water in Florida, which is like hell. To me, sounds like a nightmare. Having sex with a toothless weirdo in a van in fucking Florida. The Florida part's probably the worst, but I'd rather be raped by a toothless guy than fucking be in Florida.
Say, think of how many people that was their last night on Earth.
Jesus.
He kind of looks like the Green River Killer just a little bit.
He does look like Gary Ridgway.
We see John make tons of the green orchid drug while Susan trips balls while staring at a flower nearby. She says she wishes she was an ant since they're so shiny, and LaRoche says she's shinier than any ant, to which she says, "That's the sweetest thing anybody has ever said to me." So drugged out of their minds. We cut back to Donald and Charlie in the present, watching Susan get picked up at the airport by LaRoche in his murder van, his Green River Killer van. Charlie is disappointed that Donald was right about her, while the two brothers tail them through the night to a house somewhere in suburbia. I wasn't really sure if it was supposed to be like outside of Miami or if it was just somewhere, because they drove for a long time.
They drove for a long time, yeah.
Donald hops out of the car to get a closer look, and Charlie says he should be the one to go because it's his. Yeah, he never really knows what to say there. I don't know if that was Donald's writing, but anyway, Donald says, "You're the man," and Charlie sneaks onto the property and where he sees LaRoche's big grow operation in a greenhouse in the backyard. He sees hundreds of the ghost orchids in the greenhouse, then hears LaRoche and Susan getting it on with one of my favorite lines. LaRoche saying, "I don't know what came over you," and Susan says, "You came all over me last time, as I recall." So good.
Gosh.
It's kind of like quiet and muted.
Yeah.
It's
subtitles just picked
so
it up.
fucking funny. I wonder if that was improv by Meryl Streep or Chris Cooper.
I hope.
Charlie sees Susan snort the green powder, then ride LaRoche like Sean Archer's wife rode Castor Troy. But he's spotted by LaRoche through the window. She didn't know it was Castor Troy, you see. Face off. Charlie runs for it, but butt-naked LaRoche quickly catches him in the yard. LaRoche throws him inside their house, and then Susan recognizes him as the guy who's writing a movie about her book. LaRoche is excited to meet him since Charlie is adapting their book, and so he says, "Well, that's wild. It's nice to meet you." But Susan is less than thrilled since Charlie knows too much. LaRoche is cool with just letting Charlie go, but Susan wants to know why he followed her, and they both realize he saw what was in the greenhouse. He doesn't really know what's, like, how would he know that there's a connection between those orchids and this green shit that she's snorting up? She asks
maybe
if
it looks like a grow operation, so he could report it regardless.
I guess, but why? I mean, what trouble would he really get into for growing a bunch of orchids? She asks if he's going to write about this in his screenplay, and Charlie says, "I really don't know what this is," which is true. He has no fucking idea. She says he's lying, and then comes to a slow, tearful realization that this will ruin her life unless they get rid of Charlie. Meryl Streep's really great in that.
Yeah.
That moment. She's okay at acting sometimes. She says we have to kill him, and LaRoche is shocked. They argue for a while, and Susan says she can't have the world knowing about them since I guess she doesn't want to be known as a drug addict who bangs toothless weirdos. Like, are you ashamed of me? She's like, oh, no. But I think it goes back to the marriage thing where it's like being found out as somebody who cheated and then being divorced is almost worse than death to her.
Yeah.
And her, like, you know, clique of New York people, you know. It's crazy how that works. I don't know. It's like this status thing in New York, and especially with these higher up socialites, to be divorced, I guess.
It's that judgment, yeah. It's that judgment.
Yeah. LaRoche says that they can't kill anyone, and she says, okay, then I'll do it myself. Meanwhile, Donald's outside and has been listening in on what's going on this entire time. Susan forces Charlie at gunpoint to drive to the Fakahatchee Strand while following LaRoche's van. They drive to a dead end, and Susan tells him to get out of the car. Charlie spots Donald hiding in the back seat, and before Susan can kill Charlie, Donald kicks open the door, knocking the gun out of Susan's hand. The brothers run for it in the pitch black, terrifying as hell Florida swamp, while LaRoche and Susan grab flashlights and another gun. Things get real intense as Charlie and Donald take cover from their would-be killers hiding behind a fallen tree just feet from where LaRoche and Susan are looking for them. Susan, this seems like Charlie just adding a little thing to it. Susan says she didn't get a good look, and all she could tell was that the other guy was fat.
Yeah, Donald wouldn't write that. No, it's too mean.
Yeah. Charlie starts freaking out, saying they're going to find them, but Donald says he doesn't think that they will. Always the optimist. Even in this scene. Well, we'll get to it, but yeah. Charlie says, I don't want to die, Donald. I've wasted my life. And then he goes on to say, I admire you, Donald, you know. I spent my whole life paralyzed, worrying about what people think, but you're oblivious. Donald says, I'm not oblivious. And Charlie recounts a story from high school when Donald flirted with a popular girl named Sarah, and when he walked away, she and her friends all started making fun of him, and it was like they were laughing at Charlie too. Which I kind of wonder, like, you think that was autobiographical? Was there like a time when Charlie tried to flirt with some cute girl, and then he found out that they all made fun of him?
Or just imagine they did.
Yeah. Which
it kind of mirrors what happened with the waitress.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, she like looks at him, and then the other waitress like stares at him. So embarrassing, like, and sad. Mm-hmm. He says Donald never knew and seems so happy afterwards. But Donald says, I knew, I heard them. Charlie asks why he was so happy still, and Donald says, I loved Sarah, Charles. It was mine, that love. I owned it. Even Sarah didn't have the right to take it away. I can love whoever I want. Charlie says, but she thought you were pathetic. And Donald laughs and says, that was her business, not mine. You are what you love, not what loves you. That's what I decided a long time ago. God, I wish we could all live like Donald.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
It'd be such a blessing if we could just be able to turn it on like that, like turn off that embarrassment or that self-doubt and worry about what people think of you. Charlie starts crying and thanks his brother. Donald asks for what, and before he can answer, Susan and LaRoche zero in on where they are, since they've been having a long, in-depth, heart-to-heart conversation within earshot. Goes right back to that maudlin. Night turns into day, and the brothers decide to head for their rental car since the van seems to be gone, but they quickly spot LaRoche sleeping nearby. Susan screams from down the road in the van to try and wake up John, and he shoots Donald in the shoulder accidentally while getting up. Which is funny. That also feels like a Donald thing because the gun wasn't even pointed at them, but
like
he somehow shot him in the
the
shoulder. Yeah, and like we see it happens off camera, so like it's just Charlie's reaction to Donald getting shot.
Oh! Shit!
Charlie gets Donald in the car and they speed down the road. Donald says, I can't believe I got shot. Isn't that fucked up? While laughing. And then Charlie like holds back a laugh while saying, shut up, stop laughing. Then the car slams into a park ranger's truck at full speed, sending Donald through the window. So the park ranger was coming to check like the area. Why is he driving so fucking fast in that direction? They drive into each other so fast. And I don't remember Charlie ever like putting on a seatbelt. But he's fine. I guess because there was a airbag.
He probably,
there.
because he got the airbag where Donald's airbag didn't deploy.
Donald did not have an airbag. Charlie comes to and sees his brother's lifeless body on the ground. He tells Donald he'll be okay, but Donald closes his eyes and passes out. Charlie tries to sing his brother Happy Together to revive him, which works. Donald slowly opens his eyes, gives his brother a big smile, and then dies. Charlie screams for help, but Susan shows up and is shocked at the scene of Donald and the park ranger dead on the ground. Charlie runs for it, but Susan and John give chase. They quickly catch up to him. It's funny, like you can see the fat like really going up and down in that shot.
Yeah.
They quickly catch up to him, and LaRoche checks to see if Susan still wants Charlie dead, and she gives him a really like sad, pained look. Then LaRoche loads his rifle and, while nearly hyperventilating, raises the gun to kill him. But Charlie is saved in the nick of time when LaRoche is drug under the water by an alligator. I love that that moment because that feels so real. Like he doesn't want to kill anybody, and he's like being forced to by this woman that he loves, and it's just fucking like hyperventilating. He's like, I don't want to do this, but I got to.
I'm not a murderer, mister.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have to do this too. I'm not a killer.
Susan screams as LaRoche is death rolled by the alligator, and by the time she gets to him, he's already dead. Charlie scrambles to a nearby bank and Susan yells, "Oh God, you fat piece of shit. He's dead, you loser." Then Charlie finally gets some balls and yells back,
Fuck you, lady! You're just a lonely, old, desperate, pathetic drug addict!
She sobs over LaRoche, and she says she just wants her life to go back to before it got all fucked up, and she wants to be a baby again. She wants to be new. Which I'm not... I feel like there was some symbolism that might have gone over my head there, like what exactly she meant by that, and if it tied back into the plants, like rebirth and renewal, because like the plants live, then they die, then they regrow, you know. Charlie just stares at her and thinks to himself, I can't believe I jacked off to this bitch. The cops show up and Charlie is given a blanket, which is exactly something Donald's character would have added, because he's probably watched that in all those action movies.
The same thing.
It's so funny. Charlie's given a phone where he calls his mom to tell her her son is dead while sobbing. It's like, it's funny because it's like Charlie and Donald mixing so well in these scenes. Like there's the elements of Donald's writing and the elements of Charlie's writing. So meta. We cut to a short time later where Charles is home eating alone, sitting across from an empty chair. And he looks over and sees Donald's empty like writing area. Next, we see Charlie putting the finishing touches on his screenplay, including the line Donald said about how you are what you love, not who loves you, but with the added context of Charlie saying he tries to thank his brother, but he can't put it into words. We see Charlie and Amelia sitting outside of a restaurant. Must be a short time later after that because like his face is healed and all that kind of stuff. We see that his face is still messed up in the previous scene of him sitting at home alone, but then he's back to normal. She asks him how he is, and he says okay, and then he tells her that he misses her a lot. She asks how the script is coming along, and he says he's almost finished. That's the most important part after what's happened, which it's almost like it's just been the death of this thing that he imagined this whole time. Like his alter ego is dead, and now he can be who he wants to actually be. He can embrace those parts of Donald that were missing, but he's still Charlie at the same time. He asks how she is, and it's clear that her new relationship with Peter Griffin is going great. She tells Charlie they went to Prague, and then tells him all about it with the puppet theater and the cathedral made out of bones and all that kind of shit. And she says that she thought about him while she was there, and he stares at her for a long beat before giving her a kiss. She asks why he's doing this now since she's with someone, and he says that he loves her. Finally gets the stones at the very end of the movie to try and make a move on her, even though she's already with somebody else. Though, I mean, it's Peter Griffin. I mean, he can outdo that. He wrote Being John Malkovich. Come on. She says she has to go, and she walks away. And then she turns around and says, I love you too, you know. They smile at each other, and then she leaves. So you kind of wonder, like, if they got together at the end. In the parking garage, we hear Charlie narrating that he knows how to finish the script. He says, it ends with Kaufman driving home after his lunch with Amelia, thinking he knows how to finish his script. And he says, shit, that's voiceover. McKee would not approve. How else am I going to show his thoughts? I don't know. Well, who cares what McKee says? It feels right. Conclusive. I wonder who's going to play me. Someone not too fat. I like that Gerard Depardieu. But can he not do the accent? Anyway, it's done, and that's something. So, Kaufman drives off from his encounter with Amelia, filled for the first time with hope. I like this. This is good. We see Charlie drive away, and Happy Together plays while some flowers raise into the frame, and we watch them adapt to the elements in time-lapse over the course of a few days in Los Angeles. The end. Wait, P.S. There's a dedication at the very end of the film to Donald. Quick fact, the credits include Donald Kaufman as the co-writer. He's also a featured character in the movie, and the movie is dedicated in loving memory of Donald at the end of the credits. But Donald is just a fictional character. He's not real. Completely made up. A paragraph from Donald Kaufman's script, The Three, is shown at the very end of the film in the closing credits. It reads, we're all one thing, Lieutenant. That's what I've come to realize. Like cells in a body, except we can't see the body. The way fish can't see the ocean. And so we envy each other, hurt each other, hate each other. How silly is that? A heart cell hating a lung cell. And then it's credited to Cassie from The Three, which is Cassie is also the detective and the killer. Of course.
Yeah.
There's actually a theory that claims that this paragraph reveals the hidden meaning of the film, that Donald, Susan, and Charlie are the three, figuratively or literally. The actual end. I don't know exactly what that even means. Like, so it's Susan Orlean and Donald and Charlie are all parts of Charlie's psyche through the entire movie. Right?
Yeah.
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 So that makes sense. I can see.
Yeah. Yeah.